Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original, which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Party, as well as the County Chair of the Suffolk Party. With us is Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We are delighted, honored, and privileged to have Senator Joni Ernst of the great state of Iowa with us as our special guest today. Senator Ernst is a leader in the United States Senate amongst the Republicans. She's chairman of the Doge Caucus, which is all about saving American taxpayers' money. She's an honored veteran of military campaigns, having reached the rank of lieutenant colonel, and one of the nicest people I've met in the United States Senate, and there are a lot of very fine people I've met, but Joni Ernst is amongst the nicest and the best. Senator, welcome to Let the Record Show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Judge, and it's an honor to be with all of you today.
Well, Eric, let's turn this over to you. You'll have some questions for the Senator, and Jesse will have some questions, and if there's time, I'd like to chime in as well. Eric, you're a witness.
Joni, thank you so much for joining us. You're not just one of the nicest people in the Senate, you're also one of the most effective. So it's an honor to have you on the show. So I'd like to start with what I guess is the biggest topic of the day, of the week, perhaps the year, or perhaps the administration, are the Trump tariffs. So the president just implemented a 90-day hiatus on some of these tariffs while maintaining a 10% tariff across the board. We had a wonderful day in the stock market yesterday. The market was up almost 3,000 points. Not such a wonderful day in the market today. It's down about 1,500 points. But I'm curious how the tariffs are playing in the Midlands, what the impact is on Iowans, and your sense of what the president is attempting to achieve.
Well, thank you, Eric, so much. And again, it's just a privilege to be with you. And yes, we do have the 90-day pause on tariffs, but let us all remember that President Trump had gone out to the American people and outlined what he wanted to do as part of a way to bring some of these other countries to heel, namely China, and that included tariffs. And we have seen this before in the first Trump administration. So we all knew that there would be action on tariffs. We didn't imagine it would be quite as wide-sweeping as it was. But what I will say is that sometimes I think other countries need this real shock and awe in order to shake things up and bring them back to the table. And having various conversations, whether it's with administration officials or folks here on the Hill or even at home in Iowa, they recognize it is going to be a little bumpy at first, but many of these countries have had tariffs on us for decades. And yet we've gotten so used to it that it's all just baked into the cost of our goods. Well, now we need to push back a little bit, and that's exactly what President Trump is doing. I will say it is difficult. Our farmers do rely heavily upon their commodities getting to market. Many of those markets are overseas. But again, we've been through this before, and what we want to see out of the administration are additional trade markets to blunt the effect of the tariffs on our farmers. So I'm all about giving President Trump a little time and space to get this resolved. And already, Eric, we've seen so many countries that have come knocking at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue because they really want to work this out. And hopefully for us, favorably for the American citizens.
Well, certainly I think we obviously all want the president to succeed, because if he succeeds, we all succeed. But what I think is been a little confusing to the American people, I know it's been confusing to me, is when you listen to Peter Navarro speak, he talks about the tariffs being permanent and that the purpose of them is to raise a tremendous amount of revenue. But to listen to yourself, and I happen to agree with you, and to listen for the most part to the President and Treasury Secretary Bessent, the point of the tariffs is to make the playing field more even and fairer. Can you help? Is Peter Navarro just off the reservation? Is he just playing wrong? Are they? Because they don't seem consistent. I don't see how they can both be true.
Well, what I can't do is provide you what thoughts are rolling around in Peter Navarro's head. But what I would say to the president is I appreciate that he is standing up for the American manufacturer and the American farmer and trying to make trade as fair as possible, bringing those jobs back to the United States. I do hope that a number of these countries, as they come knocking at the president's door, that they are able to work out deals where the tariffs won't need to be in place anymore. I think the overall goal of President Trump initially was that, yeah, we're going to put tariffs on these countries. If they don't make a deal, yeah, we're going to keep those tariffs out there. But I think what he would want to see is zero tariffs across the board. Other countries don't have tariffs on us. We don't have tariffs on them. So we'll see where it goes. But believe me, we'll continue to have those discussions with our colleagues and with the administration.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see the difference in treatment with China. I was glad to see that the tariffs are remaining in place there and in fact, ratcheting them up. If any actor deserves to feel the pressure from the United States, it's absolutely the Communist Chinese, because their trade practices, their theft of intellectual property, their Belt and Roads initiatives, which are attempted to undermine the American economy. It is time for someone to stand up to China, and it does appear that President Trump is doing that. So I applaud that effort.
Yeah, I absolutely do. I do too.
Sorry. One of the things that Richard referred to when he was doing your introduction was that you are a member of the Doge Caucus. Can you tell us what everybody, I think, knows what Doge is and what it stands for? But what is the Doge Caucus and what does you attempt to achieve through it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not just a member, but I am the founder of the Senate Doge Caucus. And what we do is work with the Department of Government Efficiency and Elon and his auditors and programmers. And what we are doing from the congressional side, and we do have a Doge caucus as well over in the House of Representatives, and we all work together. But what we are doing is looking for greater efficiencies in federal government. And if there are ways that we can support through legislation or maybe congressional review acts, whatever it might happen to be, that's how we are supporting. We're also looking for the fraud, waste, and abuse, which is what I have focused on in the past 10 years that I've been in the United States Senate. I started all those years ago doing a monthly Squeal Award, identifying waste within the federal government, and then offering solutions on how we combat the waste or fix it for the American taxpayer. So I had a wealth of knowledge in this area and was able to take that to Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy right after this last federal election. And thankfully, Elon has grabbed a hold of all of that information. He is running with it. And in the end, what we hope as a caucus and as a Department of Government Efficiency, that we have a more efficient federal government, one that works for our taxpayers, and we will be eliminating waste and increasing productivity. So we've got a long ways to go, but I'm just really thankful that we have the platform in order to execute some of these ideas.
Well, it's taken us generations to put ourselves in the economic hole that we're in, so it's going to take more than a fortnight to get us out of it. One of the interesting things I think that's coming out of the Doge caucus, the Doge movement, the Doge effort, is Democrats are trying to, who are in search of a message, seem to be right now for the moment focusing on Elon Musk. It seems that they've got nothing else to run on, and all they want to talk about is billionaire Elon Musk, who seems to be running the government. How effective do you think that that messaging is for the Democrats?
I think that messaging is awful for the Democrats. Who in their right mind would be out there protesting against making our government more efficient, making it work for the taxpayers? Who is out there saying we need more fraud and waste in the federal government? Well, right now, that's the Democrats. And everyday American, especially as I'm traveling across Iowa, and I hear it from all of my wonderful constituents, is that they are tired of the federal government being complacent and allowing so much of this waste to happen. So they're very excited that finally somebody is standing up and doing the right thing by right-sizing the federal government. They work far too hard for their dollars. They don't want to send a bunch of their hard-earned dollars to the federal government only to have them wasted. So we need to focus on our American taxpayer and making sure they're truly getting the bang for their buck.
Jesse,
talk about
Jesse, your turn for the senator.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
This episode is brought to you by Cadillac. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Cadillac Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Cadillac.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
Senator, thank you so much for being with us. And more importantly, thank you for your amazing service, 23-year service in the Iowa National Guard, where you served in Kuwait and Iraq, and of course, retiring as a lieutenant colonel. What I love about your record of accomplishments as you embrace and put forward conservative policies and principles is how, in your time in the state, you helped take a $900 million deficit and turn that into a $1 billion surplus, something that this nation certainly needs, as we've been talking about DOGE. But let me just touch base with DOGE a little bit. Just yesterday, the Department of Government Efficiency released a series of about 108 wasteful contracts. Those contracts had a value of either between $250 million to $70 million. One of them was an example of a $14,000 for the Department of Health and Human Services for Executive Transformational Leadership Training Program. I had to write that down because I wanted to make sure I got it right. I mean, you have been on the Senate floor. I know your colleagues are doing what they're doing from a political point of view, but quietly, they must be agreeing with you or must be just shaking their heads like you are at the questionable fundings and programs that the Biden administration has been funding for the last 4 years.
Oh, absolutely. And I will tell you, our Senate DOGE caucus has 35 Republican members. We do have a Democrat that kind of, and I won't name him, but he kind of operates on the fringes of our caucus because while he doesn't want to be a named member, he believes in what we are doing. So he is a little more outspoken than the other members. But you can't argue with some of these contracts. One, there are just some contracts that are outright silly, and we could even go into the spending that USAID did with a number of the contracts overseas with outrageous programs. But if you just look internally, one of the examples that Elon Musk used for my conference was, okay, we had an agency of 6,000 people, and yet they had 13,000 software licenses. Why did we need the extra 7,000 licenses? And nobody could explain why they kept renewing those licenses year after year after year. It was on autopilot, and nobody ever bothered to ask. And this is what DOGE is doing. They're finding waste in the federal government. Who can argue that we need 7,000 extra software licenses? I mean, they can't. So when you get down to the brass tacks of it, some of these folks, they can't argue against it, but they just don't want to go up against the very rabid progressive left and give them anything to come after them on. So they're going to stay with it, and Elon's a bad person and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I think most people recognize that what the Department of Government Efficiency is doing is absolutely correct.
Maybe, listen, there's only the four of us here this morning, but maybe you could just give us a little bit of insight. We've heard a lot about billions, millions, and billions of dollars of wasteful spending. Which one have you seen that just makes you shake your head and says, I cannot believe we spent money, taxpayers' money on this program that really even maybe has not gotten a lot of public notoriety?
Well, I think a lot of the USAID spending is what really started to trip the trigger for a lot of our constituents, because it was focused very much on LGBTQ plus type activities overseas, whether it's a transgender opera or you name it. We should not be funding these programs overseas. And what I thought was outrageous, because I do a lot of work in the defense space as well as the foreign policy space, is that a lot of these countries primarily do not agree with the stance of promoting LGBTQ plus. So the fact that the United States was coming in and providing for those types of programs, many of their citizens and those governments actually found it very offensive. So we were not furthering the interests of the United States. We were not becoming closer friends or allies with a number of these countries. We were angering them. So that type of spending really is what got this DOGE ball rolling. But what I can share with you and what I found was outrageous is when I started following the USAID and asking questions of them several years ago, because I've been on this for years now. Several years ago, I wanted to track down the funding that was going to Ukraine. I wanted to make sure the humanitarian aid was getting to where it was supposed to go. What we found out is that USAID was actually sending most of that money to the United Nations, where we no longer had control of those dollars or could track those dollars. The money that did flow to contracts that were supposed to help Ukraine went most of it went to overhead rates that were anywhere between 70 and 80%, where those contracts were only delivering about 20 to 30% of every dollar to the Ukrainians that needed the humanitarian aid. It was outrageous. But in that process, USAID actually wrote a letter to me threatening me and saying I could be sued for performing my oversight duties as a United States Senator under the Economic Espionage Act. Can you believe it?
Unfortunately, we can.
Yes, exactly.
Unfortunately, we can. That's what's just so crazy about it. I mean, you ask the question: who in their right mind would want to allow for all this crazy spending and try to justify it? It's the same people that are still fighting for illegal immigration.
Well, I want to raise that with the Senator. We only have a couple of minutes left. Senator, you've been one of the great fighters in protecting our borders and about the dangers to public safety because of illegal immigration. Could you talk about that for a few moments?
Absolutely. I've worked extensively on the border. I serve on the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and am so thankful for President Trump and raising the issue and actually doing something about security at our southern border, not only with illegal migration, but also combating the fentanyl crisis that we have here in the United States. But I will give an example of where it really makes a difference to an Iowa family. We had an illegal migrant about 10 years ago that killed an Iowa native, a young woman named Sarah Root. He rear-ended her while she was sitting in her vehicle at a stoplight. So he was taken to jail, and Sarah later died at the hospital. Well, he was allowed to bond out. And because he was an illegal, he was able to slip into the shadows and disappear. So he has been gone all of these years, and it wasn't until President Trump got back into office. I took the issue to Secretary Kristi Noem at Department of Homeland Security. She and her team immediately got on this, and they were able to track that man down in Honduras. And so between Secretary Noem and Secretary Marco Rubio over at State and the Trump administration, we were able to bring him from Honduras back to the United States. He was taken back into custody there in the Midwest just a couple weeks ago. He will be going in front of the court system, and finally, all these years later, Sarah Root's family will see justice.
That's a wonderful, wonderful story. It's both a sad story. The fact is we have to hold these people accountable. The Biden administration allowed open borders. It was a threat to our national security, to the public safety of our citizens. I want to thank you for leading that fight, Senator Ernst. On behalf of Chairman Garcia and Eric Levine and myself, it's been an honor and a privilege having you on this week's Let the Record Show. You're a wonderful role model for all of us. As a patriot, as a public citizen, God bless you. Keep up the good work, and we look forward to having you on the show again in the not-too-distant future. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks so much.
Okay. We'll be back in but a few moments with our second segment of Let the Record Show. We just finished our first segment. We're fortunate to have Senator Joni Ernst of the great state of Iowa as our guest, a true leader of the United States Senate and a great patriot. And we're just so fortunate to have people like that serving and protecting the American people. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a few moments.
Let the Record Show is on the air.